Welcome everyone to this week's Tim Talk. I am so excited to have the one and only Cory Mosley with us today. Listen, I am down here in, I thought Atlanta was hot. I am down here in, let's just say salty, St. Augustine, Florida, helping my daughter move some things around. Didn't want to miss Tim Talks, and calling you from the back of our Airbnb because you have to take the dogs. So all is good in our world, and just wanted to give Cory a brief introduction. Those of you that don't know, Cory Mosley means a lot to me and means a lot to Carnal. Cory was the first person to ever take a chance on putting my mug on CBT. Have I been mute this whole time? Okay, sorry, it said it muted me. So Cory was the first one to put us on CBT News, and we have just become friends ever since. And he's been a friend. With a lot of things going on in the world, I call Cory and say, how should I handle this? Just a lot of leadership things. So Cory, God bless you, brother. Thank you so much, and welcome to this week's edition of Tim Talks. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I love the mission. I love this, no one is smarter than everyone. I love the mission behind what you're trying to do and what you're continuing to do with the company. So thank you for, reaching out and allowing me to participate.
Awesome. And that's so true. We're not claiming here at Tim Talks, and those of you that know me, you especially know that we don't have the answers, and you especially know that no one's smarter than everyone. But if we all come together, we will get better together. So man, let's just dive right into it. Yeah. You've made some type of transition in your professional career. You've been in automotive for years. You're still in automotive somewhat, but you're taking a transition as far as feeding into entrepreneurs. I want to talk about your new book that is right behind you, Entrepreneurship Confidential. No plug, fun intended, but right there behind your head. But something that I'm definitely going to pick up and that I'm definitely going to read. But, the talk today is tough choices. We've all made tough choices, sometimes because we like somebody or we know we need to do something, tough choices, but they could absolutely kill your dealership, kill your business, and eventually kill relationships. So with that, I'm just going to tee you up, my friend, and just dive right into what does Cory Mosley think about when he goes into businesses and you tell a business, hey, you really need to do this, but you get what I call a case of the yeah buts. Well, yeah, right. But blah, blah, blah. So anyway, what are your thoughts there?
Well, listen, I think about the idea of tough choices, having spent 20 years working with car dealers, manufacturers, dealer associations, and even several of the tier one vendors and consulting for them. We all have these same challenges, right? Sales, marketing, operations. And when you're in that decision maker's chair, it's this moment of trying to stay on top of everything. Nobody wants to be a bad leader, right? Nobody wakes up every day and says, you know what? How bad can I mess things up? How bad can I make decisions? How bad can I do things wrong, right? That's no one's intent. But obviously we all execute basically to our highest level of thinking. So sometimes if you look to your left and look to your right, you're saying to yourself, what bigger information do I need to bring into this conversation here? Because I want to move forward. We want to get bigger. We want to get better. We want to get stronger, right? A lot of people got punished over the last 6 months with the pandemic. People got punished financially. People lost their job. People didn't get recalled back. All of these different things happened. Cash flow was an issue. So if you were a dealer and you were heavily leveraged going into the pandemic, potentially depending on where you were, right? What state you were in, what those laws were you closed or half open or virtual only or all those different things, you paid the price in certain different ways for not having the right personnel, not having the investments in technology. I mean, you and I both know what happened with Carnal through that process, where people were joining those deals that were on the hook, those people that needed to get in digital retailing, boom, started to do this, right? Now, does plugging those things in solve all the problems, right? It's the totality of the dealership. So the idea of tough choices today is, what are some of those things that you've been avoiding or you haven't been considering that need to be made? People that you're fond of, right? I had a GM years ago, dealer principal actually called me years ago. It was a client, called me on a Saturday. I'll never forget. I was in my grandmother's house and the phone rang. It was him. I ducked into her bedroom and took the call, and he's on and he says, Cory, you know, I don't know what to do with my GSM. I said, well, Brian, what's the problem? He said, well, he doesn't like to talk to customers. So I thought about that for a minute. Now you could think about that as someone coming from a GM role where you were in your history, but got a GSM that doesn't like to talk to customers. Now I think for most of us, if we were thinking about what the ideal candidate of a great GSM would be, other than the operational and tactical things, it would be their ability to almost be the supreme go-to person to take that TO or talk to a customer. So he was struggling with that genuinely as a dealer principal who had 5-6 stores, multi-millionaire guy, guy's got hundreds of employees, was really struggling with that because he said, he's been with me 10 years, right? And here's the kicker, he had the guy on a guarantee. So he wasn't even on a performance-based pay plan, right? So I said to him, Brian, I said, honestly, I don't know that you're calling me for advice. I think you're calling me in some psychological way for permission to do what you know, or reinforcement to do what you want to do. But at the end of the day, something like loyalty, right? Loyalty is a bonus. It's something that matters when someone's still doing their job and performing at the highest level, right? So that GSM shouldn't have kept his role and affected sales negatively just because he's willing to stay around and get paid his guarantee. So that's what I mean when I talk about tough choices. He knew what he needed to do, but he was struggling with actually doing it because of whatever pain he associated with having to find someone else or having to trust someone new. But in the end, he knew it had to be done.
Did he do it?
He ultimately, not as with most, procrastination permeates through every entrepreneur and small business owner, dealers included. So it probably took another 2 or 3 months before he took any real action.
You know, you're preaching. You know, sometimes you're not to get spiritual, but I always do. You're sitting in a church service, you feel like the guy's talking directly to you. Mm-hmm. You're talking directly to me, and we've had to make those decisions. You know, you have to understand that sometimes, you know, especially in your business, on your team, and listen, I know there's a few dealer principals, and obviously this gets shared and reshared, but most people, you know, you might be a BDC manager, and it might be that BDC rep that you love, you met the family, you met the kids. Look, we've done it. I have many, many, many flaws. Just ask my wife, okay? Or Holly Ann for that matter. But the people that are closest to me, they'll tell you where all the flaws are. And one of them is, in all seriousness, is a big heart, big compassion. Well, let's leave them on, let's do this. But we've got to understand that sometimes, especially depending on what type of role they are in your dealership, in our business, is that customer dealer facing, they could be doing more harm than good. We just had to make a tough decision, which I won't go into, but we had to make a tough decision. And we had to make tough decisions at the beginning of COVID. I mean, that absolutely ripped our guts out because you don't want to make those decisions. But you need to really look at the health and well-being of not only what you're trying to do, and quite frankly, you know, if that role, and we're not just talking about firing people, there's other things. Maybe you need to switch vendors. Maybe a vendor's not working for you. And we can talk about that in a little bit, but yeah. But looking at game film, if you're not looking at your game film, we talk about it all the time. Stay tuned for the book, Clear Eyes, Full Hearts Can't Lose. And if you have clear eyes and you're looking at your game film on a weekly basis, you see where the shortcomings are. I interrupted you, Cory. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, when you were talking about that, so ultimately there's 3 categories, and we use this particularly in our dealership work, right? In what we call our kind of consulting framework, right? So there's human capital, which we're talking about kind of now, and we can kind of look at the 3 phases of this, but there's human capital, there's process and approach, right? So what are those systems internally to operate and run our business? And then the third thing is, what are our optimal partnerships, right? So who are the people we're working with? Who are the people that we went into a store and found out a dealer had been paying a particular vendor $2,000 a month for the past 3 years, and we couldn't source one sale. But it was, on autopilot, right? It was on auto pay on the credit card, and there was no real rep and they got some report and nobody was really paying attention to it in that regard. So that, of course, would not be an optimal partnership. And those were dollars and cents that, when potentially faced with another opportunity, they go, oh, well, we can't, our budget is full. Well, your budget's full, but you weren't, not really, because you're throwing away 25 grand a year on this service that's not doing anything for you, as an example. So, and then, the same tools, so it's funny, right? The same psychology that we apply, that you want people to apply in your business from a sales end, right? You want your account managers to build relationships, or your performance managers to build relationships with the dealer, right? For the purpose of not only keeping the product, I mean, that's sales, right? You don't want turnover. So for keeping the product going in the store, you want the product to do what it's supposed to do. But sometimes those tough choices are, I love this rep, right? But the product is not working for me anymore. That's a tough choice, right? Human capital, not just firing. So to your point, this isn't just about, hey, cleaning house, which I guarantee you needs to be done in a lot of instances, but sometimes you simply have people, to use a car analogy, in the wrong vehicle. They're in the wrong position, right?
I'm gonna take that.
Right. So you think that you think that they've got the gift of gab, so they need to be on the sales floor, when they could be an excellent service writer if they were trained properly. Yep. So you have these rules that we're put in our business that you can't. You know how hard it is to get promoted from, well, you do because you were GM, but how hard it is to get promoted from a salesperson to a management role inside your own, if you can't do it inside your own organization, yep. Right? What is the percentages of resumes that come over from management jobs where a hirer or a decision maker sees you're not a manager already and then won't consider you?
You just punched me right in the face, because I'll never forget, as a 25-year-old kid, I think I was 25 or 26. I wanted to be a pre-owned manager, wanted to be a pre-owned manager, and I didn't get hired. And it took another dealership meeting me out elsewhere, seeing me at an event, and recruiting me
right.
To be a F&I manager at another dealership. And then, ironically enough, almost a year to the day later, that particular dealership hired me back as the pre-owned manager, because I still love pre-owned cars. So it's funny that you say that, because that was true of my career. I could not, I did. And part of it was, and I don't want to say I was the greatest, because I wasn't the greatest salesperson, but I had all the plaques on the wall. And I think personally that decision for them was, they didn't want to take me off the floor. And I've had that before. If we promote this person, we're going to lose these 10, 15, 20 deals a month, whatever the number is. Right. At the same time, you're hurting that person's professional career, because you want to keep them. And
here's the other thing. Well, how unsystemized are you then if all of the weight is in simply, if so much weight is put into one person, right? So, I mean, you're always going to have your 80-20 rule, or whatever theory you like to follow about, who your top players are and what tier people are in. But the process and the strategy has to survive the person, right? That's like a BDC. I've had a dealer, oh, we closed our BDC down. Why? The person left. Huh? Yeah. So it was one, that was a single-minded strategy. That was all an investment in simply one person or one or two people. So there was no actual process. Your dependency was not on the process to operate. It was on the people solely. And that obviously is a very damaging structure to create inside a dealership environment, obviously.
Yeah, and we preach that with our tools, and this isn't a Car Now commercial. This should be every vendor commercial. A particular product. Don Franklin Group in Somerset, Kentucky, runs differently than the Paul Miller Group in New Jersey. They have different. Number one, there's different people. Those people have different strengths and weaknesses. So who are we to say, you know what, we're so good that we're going to take this piece of inventory, we're going to put it in your dealership. So that's why it's so important for us to listen about, do they have a BDC? Do they have an internet? Who's the lead person? Who do we create a champion? And once we get that data together, then we can say, okay, well, similar dealerships, this is, you wrap it, because without leadership, without people owning any tool, any process, those processes are not going to be nearly as effective as they could be. That's great stuff.
Right. Yeah.
That's really good stuff. Give us something Can you give me a commercial? I'm staring at the Entrepreneurship Confidential sign. Can you give me a little takeaway from that? Is I thought I have good have copy already, but I'll buy it like everybody else, and I'll have you sign it. I'm teasing Cory, but I will buy it. But give us something from that as I stare about it. Why should give me the Reader's Digest version there?
Yeah, so obviously a couple things. I mean, as you talked about, I mean, I spent 20 years primarily in the automotive industry, and what I learned from building that business also was ultimately car dealers have the same challenge that business owners do. So one of the things that one of the things that I've dedicated myself to is taking that education, taking those sales marketing strategies that we've been working with dealers on forever, and taking that to what I call the rest of the world. There's the car business, and then there's the rest of the world, right? For most people. So, fundamentally, this is actually my second book. I did write an automotive specific book several years ago called The Way I See It. We actually had Jim Ziegler was kind enough to write the foreword to that. Shout out to Jim. And so that is also in the marketplace. That is automotive specific. In my next book, I chose to target entrepreneurs, and particularly first-time entrepreneurs, people who wanted to pursue their business, people who have been, wanting to get out there and do more. And ultimately, as you know, because I come from automotive retail, right? The pitch is always, this is as a salesperson, there's the lot, there's the inventory, there's the systems, you're your own business. So fundamentally speaking, particularly in today's market where you have social media, where there are 19-year-olds coming into the car business that are getting on TikTok and selling 15 cars a month using TikTok. They're not waiting on a lot for anybody. They're not waiting for the up bus. They're not doing any of that. So, this just isn't, this book also has been very, very valuable to people outside of the industry, but individuals who are want to take a more entrepreneurial approach to how they do their business in the dealership has been benefiting from the book also.
It's funny. I mentioned you autographing my book, and if you look at the chat, everybody started blowing up. Hey, he'll autograph it if you order it online. And here, Ton Steinbart, an autograph copy. So I guess that got a little attention there.
That's so funny.
I will order it online. Just see my name come through and my credit card through, and send me a little note. That is so. Seriously, that's why it's such a. I don't want to say it's easy what you're doing in transition, but people are people, right? And I love what you're doing. I love what Glenn Pack.
It's not easy, by the way. But
no. What I mean is, people are people. Whether I'm selling hamburgers or cars or whatever, people are people. And that's what I love. What you are doing, what Glenn Pash is doing. You've been on that podcast. Quite frankly, personally, one of the best. I felt good. He even I had a few tears coming out because I was talking about my same friend that we're going to go to his funeral in Arlington in a couple of days. So he made me tear up a little bit. But anyway, I love the people part. So how does for example, in our business, how does a group like the Don Franklin sell 2,700 cars more this year than last year? And right down the road from them, how does a Dan Cummins in Paris, Kentucky? I've mentioned 2 Kentucky dealerships. I'm from Kentucky. Go Big Blue. But how does a dealership that is in a town with 10,000 people sell 10,000 cars a month? Let me say that again, unless you missed it. A dealership that is in a town with 10,000 people sell 10,000 plus cars. I said a year, excuse me, a year. And it's because people, I don't know if you've ever been there but you go in there and the energy is absolutely amazing. If you follow Josh Cummins, the energy, he loves on his people. He encourages his people, to get people to do, not get them, but to join your vision together. That is true no matter what we're selling. And I'm assuming you're seeing that, and that's what you're preaching to a lot of young entrepreneurs. Number one, to make the jump, right? And number two, that it's all about the people that you pull around you as they help you row the boat, right?
Yeah, well, listen, two different topics. One, right, from the car dealership in, obviously benefiting. Car dealers benefit from the rollover, right? So the rollover, that database, you can have an explosive growth month and a series of years that you have growth. And then because of that database now, if you manage that properly, right, with a 42-month average trade cycle, you kind of start an 800-pound gorilla. When one of the last retail positions I held was with a luxury dealership group, and we had a bank that wrote leases that were crazy, stupid residual leases. It was a private bank that was writing 80% leases, 80% residuals on the cars. Wow. And we had an exclusive for our brand with them. So for like 2-3 years, we were blowing so the growth of that organization shot up, not because we were just so great, but we were exploiting an opportunity in a positive way. But that bank, of course, so we started out selling everybody by hundreds of cars.
Yeah, and what happened to the bank?
Well, that bank went, what do you think happened when you put cars out at 80% residual? That bank went BK. And then now, if I was to go back to that store now, if I look at that store's numbers, now everyone is kind of leveled out. But they had a good run for like 5-6 years because they put so many units in operation because they were, I mean, I'm talking about $200 a month difference in payment.
Wow.
Because of that relationship. So they exploited an opportunity. They were able to blow up, and their database swole to a point where now they were in the driver's seat. So that happens a lot. I mean, of course, you got to be doing a lot of things right to sell a lot of cars, but there are also circumstances that can position you and put you on a great run. And now your responsibility is to really maintain it, you know? So to your point on the other side, from an entrepreneurship standpoint, not everybody is supposed to be. That's a fallacy. Like, people get convinced or get told, you know, you got to go out on your own. You got to do this, you got to do that. And that's the only path, but that's not the only path. Right. And moreover, it still goes back to being in the right vehicle. And where I got that analogy from is probably one of the most interesting commercials I ever heard. It was a commercial for a company called The Income Store. And it ran on Sirius Radio a ton. And I used to hear it all the time. And it was just a great commercial. And here was his point. He said, Tim, if I told you there was going to be a race, there was going to be a race between a 10-year-old and last year's winner of the Tour de France,
who would win,
right? And then the answer, of course, is everybody, well, of course, the Tour de France. And he said, well, what if I told you that the guy from the Tour de France is going to be riding a tricycle and the 10-year-old is going to be in a 10-speed, right? It's no longer about the person, it's about the vehicle that determines the outcome. So people simply need to make sure they're in the right vehicle. If you're willing to do the work and want to be an outstanding salesperson, and there is some, you know, there's always that nature versus nurture conversation that people like to have. But if that's the right vehicle for you, now figure out how deep you can go in that vertical. I left the retail. One of the reasons I left the retail car side of the business was because I didn't see the upward mobility of opportunity. And we can get into the variety of reasons that would have driven that with me starting the car business in Virginia. There's certainly some factors 20 years ago that probably attribute to my inability to potentially move. But I didn't see those upward opportunities. But I fortunately, again, we talked about going on a good run, came into the marketplace at a time when this little thing called the internet came to be. Right. So I was fortunate enough to then work for some organizations that were trying things, that were doing things, to learn some systems and some processes and some word tracks and all of these things that allowed us to build some successful business development centers and internet departments. So again, that was a tough choice for a dealer, a tough choice to make that decision to invest in the unknown. Because there's one point I want to make. I talk about this in my presentations for anybody that's seen me live. I talk about this idea of the itis. And when I talk about the term itis, anything with itis at the end is usually bad. We think about it medically, right? We think about bronchitis, bursitis, right? So it's a disease. A lot of dealers have a disease I call who else-itis. And there's so much fear in the market, right? A dealer or a decision maker will look at a product, look at a service, right? And they'll go, man, this sounds interesting. I think it could sell me cars. But let me ask you something, Tim. Who else is on it?
Yeah.
Right. And that becomes the decision-making driver for a lot of people. They want to hear some big name. They want to hear what so-and-so, you know, the people we always hear about, they want to hear what so-and-so is doing. Or if they don't hear a name that they recognize, then that turns them from the opportunity of going first. And my attitude is, well, okay, well, here's what we'll do. Let's put a pin in this conversation. I'll come back when there's 13,876 dealers on the same program, and then we'll see if you can get a competitive advantage, right? So I think there has to be, again, tough choices. There has to be that decision and a willingness to invest. You can't invest in everything, but don't be afraid if something makes sense. Some of the greatest gains that the dealers I've worked with over my career have come from them taking a step to get involved in the area, to take my advice, to take something you've never heard of yesterday, and to be willing to now invest in it and find gains. So some of these uptick in sales, some of these things have come from, I mean, early on, 15 years ago, email marketing. No one was collecting email addresses in a dealership, in a service department or sales department. And there were people that looked at it like, why do we want to do anything with email? Let's crank up that direct mail, right? So, and then the market changed. Chat. I'm the first guy to tell you, when I first heard of the idea of chat, because I can admit when I had tunnel vision on, I said to myself, who's going to give you all who's going to start giving you their information and just type it in the computer, like their name and their email address and their phone number? And someone came to me and said, hey, look at these transcripts. Look at the type of conversations people are having. People are willing to do that. So that evolution, think about the people who said no, 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 no for years. How many opportunities they missed out because because so-and-so wasn't a client yet.
Right.
So that goes back to that tough choices that I'm talking about. Technology, people, processes, tough processes, things that you have that are dealer-centric right now. You've got process. A lot of dealers have processes in their store that are good for them, not necessarily good for the customer. So when you start taking a customer-centric approach instead of a dealer-centric approach, you have a greater opportunity to improve customer experience. And we all know when a customer experience improves, so does overall gross profit. So yes, you might have a skinny front end, you might have a skinny back end, but that's processes also. But what's the total opportunity do I have for my lifetime value with that customer if I try to do things in a better way or do something different than I did before to think about the future?
Absolutely, especially because you're planting seeds. If you have a happy customer, even if it's a skinny front and a skinny back, you're getting that customer in your service drive, hopefully, right? And then you're allowing them to service. My friend Bob Lanham at Facebook said, if you can get someone in your service drive twice a year, they're 5 times more likely to buy their next vehicle from you. So you plant those seeds. I'm not going to, everybody on Tim Talks that's tuning in and retunes in on YouTube has heard the story 2 weeks ago when I went to try to buy another Jeep. I had literally the best experience from the BDC manager or the internet person, whoever answered my phone call. And I showed up at the dealership and it was one of the worst experiences I've ever had in my life. But the dealerships don't understand that even the skinny deals, love on your people, create a customer, they're going to go to
Did they give you a gift certificate to like Applebee's or something until you could tell you they're sorry? Did they give you a free Chick-fil-A?
If you would open the book, and I know a lot of Tim Talks listeners are going, here we go. I'll maybe tell you offline, but long story short, I tried to be easy. I didn't want to be the car guy and be that guy, right? Yep. I know I walked in, I saw what it was advertised. I knew it was a good price. I pulled up MMR on my phone and said, hey, look, I don't want to be, just give me I said, and I quote, give me anywhere close to MMR and we'll put a deal together. So, it was a Jeep. So then they ended up charging me $6,000 over what was listed. And I said, well, where's this at? Well, it's in the fine print. No fine print. Doc fee wasn't included, which is illegal in the state of Georgia. And then they held, and then I put MMR and they hit me almost $4,000 light of MMR. So I was very nice. I kind of chuckled a little bit, but those types of things, I'll never, but I know I'm active in my community. A lot of people know what I do. That dealership thought they were, getting ready to pencil a 10-pounder or whatever. But I'll never be back there. They weren't a client of ours, obviously, right. Based on the way they treat their customers. But I'll never go back there. No one from my inner circle will ever go there. So right. That's what we're trying to teach people is those processes could right. Crush you.
Well, here's the deal, though. They don't think. I'm going to tell you that in those circumstances, they don't typically think they did anything wrong. It just happens to be how they do business. Now, what happens in that environment is it's an erosion. You don't lose 50 sales a month out of thin air. It's an erosion over time. It's just like having a bad manager. That manager might not get fired tomorrow. It might take 2 years. I know an organization right now who has the worst captain of the ship, And it's just going to take the owner time to realize it. And it's going to take him time. That time could be 6 months. It could be 6 years that guy gets to ride out his check in this situation while he has everybody fooled. But it's just time. So that erosion will take place where a couple things will happen. Number one, sales effectiveness will suffer. There'll be an issue there. You'll have the manufacturer, maybe the manufacturer's obviously stepping in. If you're looking at history right now, several dealerships are in situations where the manufacturer is stepping in. Or number two, that owner just says, you know what? I don't want to have to do all this transparency crap. And somebody comes in and they cash out and they have a nice day. There is no penalty. You know, we think it's this reckoning that's going to come with people, and no, it doesn't actually typically work that way.
I love that. I love the word that you just used. You used erosion, and I think that's spot on. I think that's happening to a lot of dealers, unfortunately, especially now, but because we're getting just like the bank that you talked about with the fake residuals. Look at what's happening in dealerships all across the country. We went from March, oh my gosh, sky's falling, April and May, June, July, record months, running out of inventory. Now producing cars back, it's going back up, and you know, people have all this pent up money. RV sales are higher than they ever have been. People are not flying. They're either fixing cars or getting boats, and they're getting new cars. So we are sitting in the middle of, you know, this amazing, you know, whatever you want to call it, economic flow, especially in the car business. That there's a false sense of security, because when things are good, things don't get put under the microscope. I mean, they just don't, because people are just pouring into the store. And now's time, especially to, again, I can't preach it enough. We try to do it on a weekly basis in our company, is let's look at what's working, what worked last week, what worked last month, and let's continue to pile on.
Right.
It's just look, I really believe, I told this to Glenn, and I'll say it. I really believe if every single person, or at least the main leader in any organization, has two qualities, or doesn't have two qualities actually, is not insecure and they are humble, and they walk into any meeting, because that's what happens. I mean, I can't preach that over enough. It happened to me early in my career. I get promoted and then promoted again, and pretty soon you're selling more cars than anybody around you, and now you're the smartest person in the room. You know, you walk into any meeting, amen, you walk into any meeting and you're the smartest guy in the room, and you've already ascertained, you've already figured out what your objective of leaving that meeting or that conference room before anybody's opened their mouth. And it's the dealers, it's the entrepreneurs that want to walk into every, not only meeting, but every conversation. That what is this person? How can I help these people? But not because our pride is so big in our brain. We're answering. We want them to shut up really quick so we can answer and tell them how much we know. Am I right? So the dealerships, the companies, the people that take that type of step, those are the type of companies, those are the type of dealerships that are on a trajectory to you're grinning. So I'll just shut up.
I laugh because I remember this dealer telling me one time. He said, we were talking on the phone, and he said, man, I want to tell you something. You're very good. And he said, do you know how I know you're very good? Because I'm good, even better than you. So it made me laugh when you were talking about the ego effect and just people wanting to tell you how smart they are. And I never forget sitting in my car. He hired me. We did business. It was a very interesting relationship, but and part of a probably top 5 group. He was one of the operating partners. So I never forget that conversation, because it was a serious ego moment. Like, yeah, you're good, man, but you know how I know you're good? Because I'm good, and I'm even better than you. So I'm like, oh, okay. No problem. Just sign that contract.
Like, just sign the check, right?
Yeah, just sign that contract. But yeah, I mean, that's tough choices. Yeah. Tough choices have to be made. Tough decisions have to be made, because people have to be thinking about future. The term I'm using is future-proofing your business. Yeah. How can you ensure? How can you stack the deck in your favor that no matter what happens in the market, nobody saw this coming. Nobody. Let me say nobody. I'm talking about people, regular folk. Right. People, everyday people. I'm not talking about someone in NORAD or someone some association in the government, but no car dealer of everyday work saw this coming. And if somebody had said to you that March of 2020, if I would have said March of 2019, I mean, hell, we were getting ready to come back and do our workshop again this June. We're going to do all that stuff. If somebody would have told you in March of 2019 that, hey, next year, the world is going to basically come to an end. Your dealership might not even be open. People would have told you were crazy, because unlike the financial crisis or clunkers or any of that of 08, 09, that was all financial. This now became health related and fear related. And that's what a lot of dealers didn't understand going through it when they were pushing the 0% interest and still wondering why certain people weren't coming back out, because you didn't remove fear from the equation yet.
Awesome. Listen, Cory, it has been great to spend time with you. We're going to do this again. We'll get on the schedule. We'll pick up another topic. Yeah. I love being on the other side and learning myself. I learned a couple one-liners that I'm going to put in my little bag, and I'll say, I heard from Cory, because I do give credit where credit's due. So
good.
My buddy Cory Mosley said the erosion. So I'm going to use that in a few, and hopefully you've learned something. Hopefully there's a little sand in your shoe that you can take back with you and go out and tell people how to get the book, Cory, because I'm going to do it myself. How to
the easiest way to get the book is just to go to Entrepreneurship Confidential. The name of the book, Entrepreneurship Confidential. So entrepreneurshipconfidential.com. If you want me to sign it and ship from our office. It's on Amazon. It's the same price. It's the same deal. But entrepreneurshipconfidential.com is where you can get that book. My automotive book is on Amazon. If you just type in my name on Amazon, that book will come up too. If you want something car dealer or automotive specific, that book is it's a few years old, but it's still relevant to. It's eerily relevant to our current times.
Absolutely. And listen, I hold your friendship dear, and I learn a lot from you every time we communicate. Yep. And with that, please tune in next week for Tim Talks as well as we get better together. But listen, the previous several Tim Talks, we were talking about luxury. We were talking about, how to create that experience for your customers. So we made the executive decision last week to say, you know what? We're just going to put a contest together. So I made the executive decision. I called Andy and said, hey, we're just going to make this happen. So obviously we don't know who's going to win, but whatever the 4 or 5 star resort is around you, we want you, and whether that's a 4 Seasons, whether that's a Ritz-Carlton, we are going to send you and your significant other. We want you to have an amazing time. Not only are we going to do that so you can experience amazing luxury, we're going to give you a couple $100 gift card to where you can either have dinner there at the hotel. But obviously, depending on logistics, we will make sure that is an amazing night for you and your significant other. We thank you so much for tuning in. Some of you guys, week in, week out, I see the same names. Thank you. And I hate mentioning them because somebody will yell at me because I don't mention them, so I won't. But guys, thank you so much as you share and reshare on social. And as always, number 1, thank you, Cory. Number 2, no one's smarter than everyone, and let's always get better together. Register. You've got to register each time so your name goes in there, and maybe you can experience an amazing night with you and your significant other. Cory, thank you so much, my friend.
My pleasure.
God bless y'all. We'll see you next week. Let's go dominate this week. We'll talk to you soon.